probably going through enough trauma as it is being in this experience. And then you're just adding on this badge of like, what? So like my hardship consists of like this embroidery on a fucking pin.
Should come with like a little teardrop. That's the emblem
Oh
of the badge, right? A little teardrop
my
next to an
god.
eye, be like sad face.
Imagine if they did that in the military, bro. They just ran around the ranks and be like, all right, who wants their badges?
Who wants the extra tears? There you go. Have at it.
That would be so funny. Nope.
So explain to me, please, the cat that you have in your email signature. There's a picture of you, and there's a cat dude. I assume it's a dude cat on your lap. So please explain the significance, because I'm curious.
Oh, of course. So she does act like a dude.
Okay.
As long as I've owned her, like I call her my little lesbian because she walks like a man, she acts like a man.
That's funny.
She's a rescue. I got her when she was 3 weeks old. She was abandoned
Oh wow.
by her mom, and I can kind of see why. You know, she's a little bitch, but she's a little sweetheart at the same time.
Yep. Most of them are. Yep.
But she's always been my little my little champion. You know, like she always pops in during podcasts, and she's kind of become a little bit of a signature. So I feel like whenever I get like a really good like profile picture or something, she's always in there. She's always in there somewhere, and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna go with it.
Perfect. I like it. We have Karma. He's a rescue in air quotes as well. Rescued from a friend. The friend was not. Let's put it this way. Said friend is good at things in life, but he's not good at caring for living things. We jokingly say that a plastic cactus would die under his care, right? So we took Karma, that's his name, Karma is the cat, off his hands, and Karma is the nicest, schmooziest, loving cat I've ever, and I've had cats my entire life, and I swear to God, this cat is a dog in cat's clothing. He'll wait for you at the door.
Mm-hmm.
He'll follow you around.
Mm-hmm.
He'll lead you to the food.
Mm-hmm.
He'll meow at you when something is off.
Mm-hmm.
He is a dog in cat's clothing.
Cats are okay. I feel like dogs and cats. This is the caveat where people are like, oh, I'm a cat or a dog person.
Mm.
They have such a diverse array of personalities that there are dogs that act like cats. Okay, they're
There.
lazy. They do nothing. They don't want to be touched. They don't.
Nonplussed. Yep.
No, but then there are cats that are, if not just as good as dogs. Like they like to go
Yeah.
on walks. They like their bellies rubbed. Like our little fluff monsters, and they do something to you as a human being that you'd never think possibly. They teach you unconditional love, which I think as humans we don't really know how to do very well, but
Fair.
animals seem to do it a lot better than us. Like a
Yeah.
lot better than us, which is hilarious. It's like you can't even fucking talk. You can't even talk.
But they can.
They can, yeah.
But they do. You hear them loud and clear. Like whenever Karma yells at something, or yells at me, or meows at something, I mumble to myself, I hear you, but I really don't, right?
No. I just mimic the meows, and I've kind of
There
like
you go.
come up in my mind of what they're supposed to sound like and they're correlating to. I have no idea what she's talking about.
No idea. No.
No.
It's like when you when you tell your pet, I know. You really don't know, but you just tell them I know. It's good enough.
Just give AI just a couple of years. You know, when they have those AI collars you can buy on the TikTok shop. You know, you have that
My
guy
God.
from Zhengdong, China, being like, "I give you great price, only $15.99." You put this around your cat, and they're just talking shit the whole day, and you're just being like, "Damn, I should have never bought this. I should have never
Isn't
bought it."
there a Simpsons episode where Homer's long lost brother like invents like the baby collar, and or the baby translator, and they can hear what the babies are saying? That's how he makes his millions. It was an odd little episode, but that sounds just like what you're describing.
I mean, out of the 800 episodes that The Simpsons has come up with, I'm not surprised at something like that. There's like over 800 episodes. There's got to be
I'm
like
sure, yeah.
some lunatic came in there and they're like, "Are you on meth? Yes. Do you have a great story? Yes. All right, you're hired. Come on board. We need stories."
There are many. So I was born and raised in the good seasons of The Simpsons, and there are just so many good like little one-liners and little situational comments and everything. And even Conan O'Brien was a writer for the show way back in the day, unbeknownst to most people. Yeah, Conan O'Brien wrote a bunch of those episodes.
That is
So you have a lot of
hilarious.
that humor that goes along with it. And there's one episode, again, way back in the day, one of the earlier seasons, where Lisa takes the family to go see some sort of like play or I don't know, some sort of musical bit or whatever. And Homer just wasn't having it. And Lisa said something like, "Homer, you have to listen to," or she says, "Dad, you have to listen to the notes that he's not playing." And Homer said, "Psh, I can do that at home." I think just the silliness of that comment, listen to the notes he's not playing, I can do that at home.
No, it. I think what's something that gets lost a lot of the times is for a really long time we had a lot of adult cartoons that just was not existent when the Simpsons came out. Like there really was no such thing as adult cartoons. Like
Mm,
if you were an adult like in the late '80s and early '90s watching cartoons, you either were a dad or some weirdo at the CBGBs, or I
yeah,
don't know, something like that.
sure.
And then you have the Simpsons that came along, and then obviously there's a lot of other shows that came along like this too, where you're just like, okay, I don't think my kids should be watching this. Okay, definitely
Or
don't
they
be.
or they mask the adult punchlines in a way that kids don't get it, which actually is win-win, right? Even like the new like Pixar movies and the Disney movies and everything, there's a lot of adult humor in it that they've crafted specifically so that adults can appreciate it, but kids won't catch on to it. It's actually pretty brilliant.
They did that even back in the day. Like as an adult, you go back and watch Toy Story,
Mm,
and you're like, oh my god, because there's sexual innuendos throughout the
sure.
movie, and it's like it came out in 1994 and it's quote unquote PG, but come on, I mean, when Woody does that thing with Bo Peep,
Mm,
come on, come on,
I
come on,
mean,
it's like they put it in there on purpose. You know that they did. They're like, no kid's gonna figure this out, but an adult can.
a bunch of pervs up there in the animation studios. Win-win.
Imagine somebody had to edit that shit. Like I remember back in those days, like internet was slow and it took a long time, and just somebody's just like editing the shine on the ceramic figurine that's definitely been sexualized for a kids.
My God.
There's so many others, but I look like I think that's kind of the magic that came with a lot of these cartoons. I mean, a lot of them don't exist anymore, and obviously, like I feel like we're in a period already where The Simpsons and The Family Guy, if they kind of ended, I think we would be okay. Like,
Yeah.
there really is no reason to continue it. I mean,
Yeah.
they want to.
There comes a point in every show's life where you can tell that they're just trying to squeeze more out of it. They're trying to make it the cash cow that it's been, and some shows suffer horrendously bad from it. My favorites like Community. Community was a great, great, great show. It only needed 1 through 4 seasons, right? Didn't have to do, season 5 and 6. Arrested Development, right? One of my all-time favorite shows. Seasons 1 through 3, they could have left it at a high note, but then like 15 years later, they tried squeezing
Walking Dead.
seasons 4 and 5 out of it. Walking Dead is a perfect example of that too. Lost. Now, Lost also suffered from the writer's strike, right? By Game of Thrones, right? There's a couple different shows that really could have just ended on a high note. Even had you been left on a cliffhanger, you still like Chappelle Show. Chappelle Show did it perfectly. Only 3 seasons. It's a lot shorter than people like to admit, but Chappelle Show left on the highest of high notes. And it was perfect. Yeah, we wanted more, but we didn't get any more, and it's okay because we will always remember Chappelle Show as being one of the greatest shows to ever have graced television because it ended on a high note.
Yeah, I mean, then there's also like shows like even in the '90s, like Friends, for example, which
Mm,
had 10 seasons. But the issue is that like it starts off where it's kind of fun and organic and kind of unrealistic because obviously like I'm from New York. That's not no one really in New York lives like that.
yeah.
But then it kind of comes becomes very very serious. And then when you start watching towards the end you're like, is this a sitcom? Is this a drama
Mm,
series?
mm,
Is this you can't really call it a sitcom towards like the last 4 seasons.
mm.
Okay, let's be honest. Like it's more of a drama telenovela kind of thing going on with like sitcom throw. I don't know what the actual formula to writing or creating these stories are, but there is this thing that as TV shows continue on, they go from like
Mm,
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It gets a little, the water gets a little muddy.
sure. I agree with that. Also, I think that shows like Friends, shows like How I Met Your Mother, you have to run, you have to walk this really, really fine balance of having character development where people naturally and organically grow with the seasons, but you also can't have them grow too much to where they're now alienating, right, the fans that they have garnered. You don't want to open up season one and have that be a completely different person from, say, season seven. You have to have them still be the same character, but again, with some growth to show they're not just stuck in their own little world. So that's a very difficult thing to do over the course of like in your case, Friends of 10 seasons. That's a lot of episodes, in which to do something with the characters and do something in a very intelligent and meaningful way.
I just think that what we kind of forget is a lot of the times, in order to make these things possible, you need to have really creative people that can think outside of the box,
Mm,
and it goes as far as it goes, if that makes sense. Like,
mm,
obviously there's been modern pioneers of this kind of stuff, like, the creator of Rick and Morty.
right.
But he's gone for obvious reasons. I'm not going to get into that because that,
If you know, you know,
you know,
right?
you know. And now it's like, what are you doing? It's become something that it should have never became. You can't take something that obviously gains organically its own fan base, its own way of development with how people resonate with the characters, to now basically forcing a narrative by design because of where it stands and because of how popular it gets. You can't.
For the sake of more seasons,
Right.
sure.
It's how is that fair? I get it.
Yeah,
Obviously, money, marketing. All right, blah 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 blah. I hear that story every fucking day.
yeah,
Where's the caveat to that? Where's the other side
right,
to that? Where is this
yeah,
going? Because that's not a long stretch. Like, it's not an actual path to an act. Like, it's surviving long. It's just like a short
sure.
term like burst, whatever. I'm word jarbling right now, but you get my point
You're
though.
fine. I got you. I got you. I think that's one thing that, say, Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul did really, 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 really well, is that the storyline was laid out from the get-go. So there wasn't any situation where the writers wrote themselves into a corner, like for example with Lost. Lost, if you watch it, great first couple
Oh
seasons,
yeah.
completely fell apart towards the end because they wrote themselves into a corner. They had no idea what to do with the next couple of seasons. They didn't know if they're going to get renewed. But Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad, it was all laid out. So you have a lot of callbacks and references in season one that come to fruition in the later seasons, which makes for great television. But if you don't have that foreshadowing, or rather, if you don't know how many seasons it'll run, God forbid they told him, was it whatever his name was, the guy who Vince Gilligan, they told him, hey, let's do two more seasons of Breaking Bad. No, you can't. It has to end at the end of this particular season because that's where the story ends. You can't just squeeze more out of it for the sake of making it a cash cow. It doesn't work for shows like that.
No, and I think bringing up Better Call Saul is a great example of this. We knew that Saul Goodman was a piece of shit. And even like in the beginning of seasons where you kind of see he's a good guy and whatever, and the trauma that he goes through, but
Mm,
as it develops, because as it's getting closer to when Breaking Bad does start, you kind of understand his story a little bit better now.
sure.
Like, you're like, okay, obviously he's an asshole. Obviously he's a piece of shit for very obvious reasons. He threw himself into the mob and he got himself caught, and now he's like the guy. You know,
Yeah.
but that's something that I kind of appreciate too, is where you're not only having story development, but you have story progression.
Hmm.
It fits the narrative, it makes
Right.
sense. It's something like you thought about the original story the whole entire time. You're like, oh, it's kind of cool that I kind of got to know that, like now
Yeah.
that kind of puts all. But then there's series and like writers that just go the whole other goddamn direction, and you just sit there and you're like, why did you waste my life for this?
I still think that Saul's progression from wannabe good guy to the guy he turned out to be was still a better character progression than watching Anakin Skywalker turn to Darth Vader.
I had a last guest that was on, and I had Jar Jar Binks stuck in my head for like the last
Oh my
30
god.
minutes of the. You know what? This is the one thing, future, if you're listening to this episode, do yourselves a favor. Delete, destroy every single artifact of Jar Jar Binks, okay? Throw it out to space, send it to Venus, send it to the freaking sun. I don't care. This is my message to you. Remove it completely from our memory. Like, why? Why is he still a thing? Like, it's bad enough that you gave us that crap back in the early 2000s, and then you make a TV series about it? How dare you?
Besmirch the good name of Star Wars.
With an elephant animatronic thing that looks like gelatin gone wrong on a CG monitor. God,
Too much.
too much.
But anyway,
No, but I like, we both know that a lot of these franchises that originally, like, for example, obviously, like, age difference, but when we were growing up, they were still, part of, like, the nerdy and the geek sector. There were people that, like, kind of knew more than you knew, but it kind of had that, like, niche to it. Now it's just amusement parks and, I don't know, Airbnb themed places you could travel to. I don't know any other way of putting it.
well, we love our capitalistic way, don't we?
Yes,
Right?
we do.
That's all. That's the foundation of all this stuff. If it makes money, then it's a good thing.
Question is, where does it go?
You know, I had this discussion with a friend of mine recently. It's like we demonize, the ultra rich because we always kind of shake our fingers at them and be like, well, if I were in their shoes, then I would do this, that, and the other. So we kind of demonize the Jeff Bezoses and the Zuckerbergs, right? On the other
Sucks.
hand, at least in America, on the other hand, once you make your $1 million, you've made it. You have accomplished that one thing that everyone strives to do. So on one hand, yes, we demonize them. On the other hand, when someone makes it, we're like, good for you. Good for you. You've made it.
There are. That is a point though, because demonizing people because they're successful doesn't get anything anywhere. I mean, obviously, like, yeah, there are pros and cons that come with capitalism. But I don't think something that really is incredible about that is when you do have those people that are successful, they're not all pieces of shit. I mentioned this
Hmm.
before. We're talking about films and TV series. Two great examples is Quentin Tarantino and Wes Anderson. Both extremely wealthy, very powerful people, but guess what?
Yep.
They still make incredible movies. They treat their staff really well. Okay,
Yep.
obviously you have those few people that just want to collect some money, all right? Honestly, they're really great at developing a really strong team and making these productions, like film, like TV, whatever they're doing. I think they both primarily make film. But you can look at the whole pocket and demonize it through and through, or you can see it for what it is, where you do have people, even in that sector of life, even the 1%,
Hmm.
they still give a shit. They're not
Yeah.
assholes.
Yeah.
They're just really wealthy and very, very famous, and a lot of people know their
There
name.
you go. Right.
That's it.
Hopefully they're still a bit humble about it too. I mean,
Yeah.
there are plenty of examples, right? Keanu Reeves is like the
Yeah.
poster child of that, where it's like, yeah, he's rich and famous, but he's still a down to earth dude. Which I know they're not all, assholes when they become rich, but a lot of times when you turn into that, that comes with it, right? But there is still some left that are not like that, which is great to hear.
It is. Sometimes it gets lost in translation because when you focus your eye onto everything that is materialistic, and instead of realizing and appreciate the little things that come along the way, because the whole idea of being able to be financially stable, to be able to bring in mass wealth, that's just one of the many added tools to your pocket. It doesn't make you more successful in life. It doesn't make you a better person. All it does is just give you a tool that gives you more access to things.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I think that gets a lot of times lost in translation.
Well, once I become rich and famous, I'll remember all the peasants, right? That's my promise.
No, but It's sad because I think that that's where things kind of get lost in the weeds a lot of the
Yeah.
times. Instead of focusing on, you know, and I, obviously, like we talked this before, because one number one thing I've heard even from veterans, especially ones that are artistic or creative, in my case, or in the
Mm-hmm.
automotive
Mm-hmm.
industry, they're all so passionate and they're so thankful to be able
Mm-hmm.
to spend time with their family and their friends and maybe just have that random time, you know, where they just go out to the beach all together and just appreciate those small little wins, you know. And if you do get that large success, that's great, but it's not the main story here. I could be wrong. You could tell me. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. No, I'm serious. Like, what's your thoughts on that?
I look. I think it's easy to put a group of people into a box and say, well, you're a veteran or you're a whatever, from this particular walk of life, size, color, shape, whatever it is. At the end of the day, we're still individuals. We're still human beings. To the point of veterans, right? I've worked with a lot of really, really great veterans. I've worked with a lot of shitbird veterans. So just because you are a veteran does not make you a good or bad employee. I will, however, say one thing I have noticed about veterans as a whole, not always, but as a whole, is that when you work with veterans and you're a veteran yourself, it is much easier to get the the idea across of, hey, look, I may be an analyst, you may be a director, but when I need to get stuff done, I can go talk to you and say, hey, director so and so, I need you to hunker down and get this done for me because I'm on a deadline. I need you to put everything aside and get this figured out. Do it. Maybe not in those words, right? But my experience has been that people who are veterans have a much easier time taking direction and orders from people, whether they are higher or lower on the chain of command. It's just easier to work with them sometimes because they know what it means to hunker down and figure it out and get it done.
And you're right, though. It doesn't necessarily just apply to just one group. I mean, this can go to all sorts of people. I think what happens a lot of the times, if you know, we're able to see so many other people's lives, and we're able to see of how many different things, you know, people are making, you know, in all walks of life, and you
Mm,
see how, quote unquote, they're successful, they're doing, you know, and they're living in that nice fancy apartment, or they're buying those expensive cars, and they're doing
sure.
it warps your vision and idea of what is actually possible for yourself. You know, you don't have to realize in that second that you're not seeing the whole picture. You're just seeing
Yeah.
one side because they're recording what they want you to record. They're not showing you
Sure.
what you know, the actual reality that's going on. Let's be real.
Sure. Look at Instagram. I mean, hell, even just, me living in Vegas or us living in Vegas, when people say, oh, look, I'm up. I won $10,000 on the, Keno machine. Great. How much money did you put into it? Well, like today or overall, right? Those wins come at a cost, right? No one ever walks into, a casino, sticks $1 in the machine and gets $1 million out of it. Sure, it may happen. The 0.001% chance that might happen. Sure, of course. But that's not how things work, right?
No.
Those wins cost you, just like those Instagram pictures cost you. You may, come back with phenomenal pictures from a great trip you took to, was it Santorini in
Yeah.
Greece, right? And you may love it because the pictures show just the most idealized version of yourself. But guess what? It costs money. Traveling is exhausting. You may have had some heartbreak, until you get to that point where you want to take that trip, right? Those pictures come at a cost. Those stories come at a cost. Nothing is free, right? Even death will cost you your life. So all those, they're just little encapsulated, idealized versions of one little snapshot of people's lives. Those aren't reality.
No, and another thing that people tend to forget is you do have people that are professional gamblers. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I've met a professional poker player, and this is somebody that A has investment. Okay, so they're not just somebody that is just walking paycheck to paycheck. They already have money put away. They have their own
Right.
portfolio, and they can walk into a poker room and know exactly which tables they should be sitting on. They know how to calculate of how much money they should be putting at each table. This is somebody that's a professional. They've been doing this for like 5, 10, sometimes 30 years. You can't you can't just say, you know what? I hear this professional poker player. I'm going to take his advice and I'm going to go to that poker table. Guaranteed you're
Sure.
going to lose because he
Sure.
has all those skills baked in his head. He knows when he comes
Yeah.
to the table, if he's going to see a flush in four hands. He knows already.
And I think that poker is also a bit different from most other games that
It
you'll play,
is.
right? At least with poker, you play against other players.
Hmm.
You're not playing against the house, and the house always has an odds against you, right? But with poker, you play against other players, so you can make a decent living off it if you know how to play it. But it takes a lot of time to practice. I play poker. I'm not a particularly good player, but I enjoy doing it. But I also know when to quit, right? It's like I put my money down, I buy in, and then I'm done. Like once I get knocked out, I walk home because I know my limits. I will get away from it. But you can easily, stuff as much money as you want to in it. But I think also comes with a discipline of saying when enough is enough, and that whole I'm going to chase it. Just like if you ever played video poker, right? You put money in the machine, you're up, say $50, and then you're down again. But once you're up, you walk away. When you double your money, you walk away. That's the number one lesson that no one ever seems to follow. And they tell themselves, well, I did it once, I can do it again.
No, you can't.
That's a horrendously bad way of looking at it. When you're up, you walk away.
Yeah. I I remember I spoke to a professional gambler a while ago, and I asked him, I said, what's the secret to roulette? Because roulette is kind of like that. He said to me, he says, roulette is all about staying focused and counting. I was like, what do you mean focus and counting?
Counting, yeah, counting what?
He said that
I'm curious.
you have to be the person where you have to think like the gambling house itself, where there's that one schnook that comes and sits there by the table and thinks that they know everything. And they start
Hmm.
throwing out and they're losing. And then they get up and then they lose and they get up. He said if you notice very carefully, they know that he's losing, so they're winning money. So they're making sure that as long as he keeps playing on that table, they can keep him
Hmm.
going. He said the chances of you winning, you have to be prepared you're losing money before you're making anything.
Of
He says,
course.
if you're okay with doing that, he says, you're fine winning. I was
Yeah.
like sitting over there, and he has a point there. You're not coming into a place where you're going to walk out with the jackpot. You're coming in there, and you're putting money down with the chances that you're smart enough to make back if enough more of your own profit, like maybe even 3 or 5%, if you're lucky, and like you said, even double,
Hmm.
which is rare. If you could get there, good luck. Don't get addicted, but it can eat up your life.
Oh yeah.
12 hours go by, 20 hours go by. Who's counting the time?
If you come to Vegas and you go to those casinos, which are open, most of them are open 24/7. You walk in on a Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. A lot of people, not a lot, but there's always going to be someone at that video poker pressing the little button. A lot of times it's retirees that's the highlight of their day. They take their retirement check and they get to go to the casino that one morning, and they get to gamble away their $70, whatever it is. There's always going to be those zombies that just sit there, and that's the highlight of their day. It's, to me, it's sad. To them, I guess not. I hope not, but I don't know. I don't want to be. If I ever look at myself and how I want to be when I retire, I do not want the casino day to be the highlight of my week. I just don't want to be in that situation.
I think I know we've been talking about gambling, but I've been contemplating about this already for a while. And I think what a lot of the times happens is, especially when people get older, is there's been this disillusionment that exists in this country, which is you work your ass off for a job, and then you
Hmm.
retire it when you're 60, and then you wait for you look forward and you wait for your beautiful paycheck that's going to be coming in, your pension. I think that mentality is so flawed and so stupid because you're stripping away every single part of what makes a person being a person. Instead of where a person can have a career, they can get into a certain industry or get into a certain area or expertise and do something that they love, grow from there, maybe do hobbies or things on the side. And then
Hmm.
eventually, as they get older, either slow down, they have money put away, they have investments, they have things of that nature. They may be able to explore other avenues as they get older. I've seen this, especially with writers. You have a lot of older writers that they're very successful from their previous careers, and then now they're pursuing something else. And they're some of the sweetest people you'll ever meet. They're in their 70s, they're in their late 60s, some of them are in their 80s, and they love life
Hmm.
because life hasn't been taken away from them. Because that's what
Hmm.
happens. That's what you see in those casinos, unfortunately, is those people that their lives have been taken away from them.
Yeah, it's valid, right? You see those people, those zombies, and it's like I look at them a way of, in my opinion, they have that the look on their faces of I'm just waiting for the day that I die. Right? They're just waiting for the next part. I'm like, that's to me, that's pitiful.
You wonder a lot of the times the reason why I think we're afraid of age is not because we're going to get there. I think it's because what we've seen other people do when they get there. And that alone implants itself in our own minds where we think, am I going to get there? Like, is that going to be me in 40 years, or is that where my life is going to end up? I think that mindset alone can trap you instead of believing the fact that no, you don't have to be like that when you're older. You don't have to get there. Just don't start the path to get you there, right?
Yeah.
I think that'd be pretty much the logical choice to make. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Sorry, I'm a deep thinker. I'm like one of those, like, I dive in. Because I feel like also, especially like with you and your own writing, it's where you have to think deeply within your own self to be able to find the answers. And sometimes what we observe around us has a lot to play in the way that we think.
mm, I agree with that.
Yeah.
A lot of shower thoughts.
Oh, yes.
PG rated.
Oh, my goodness. Hey, well, depends. You know what? It honestly depends because I feel like a lot of the times you know, we think as adults that younger generations or people that are even in their adolescence don't understand concepts and ideas. I think they understand a lot more than we give them credit to. I have a friend of mine that she has two of her nieces, and they talk to me about things, and I'm like, you're 11 and 12 years old. Like, I don't even remember, even for myself, where I was being able to like think like that, especially at their age. It's
Mm,
amazing.
mm.
But yeah. Um, I mean, at this point, man, if you feel more comfortable with, we can get into talking about your book.
Yeah, we can pivot a little bit. We've talked about everything and nothing for a little while,
Mm-hmm.
for sure. Well, do I just start monologuing, or do you got
No, I mean,
some things to tee it off with?
no. Usually, I mean, I think the best idea is kind of your approach with your own writing. I think something really cool to be able to learn about other artists is to kind of put yourself in their own head, their own process of where they started, why do they want to put it down on paper? Because we have great ideas in our minds, sometimes we forget to put it down on paper.
Yeah, I I feel like everyone, maybe not everyone, but I think almost everyone has that one thing in their mind that they want to accomplish, whether it be, painting that one painting, or writing their one manuscript, or carving that one piece out of wood, right? Everyone has that, or make that one piece of classical music. I think everyone has this creative project in their minds that they tell themselves, one day I'll get that done. One day I'll work towards it. And when it's done, it's going to be grand. And I feel like a lot of people just don't ever even take the first step towards it. It's great being in an idea. The assumption of it, the idea of it is almost always better than actually doing it themselves, or doing it itself. But I felt like, as I was recounting my silly stories, my life experiences over and over and over to my friends and to my circles, I told myself, well, maybe there's enough here to actually put down on paper, and maybe there's enough here to actually put it on pages to publish it. One of my biggest fears, or worries rather, of the process was, well, once I, brain dump and word vomit everything onto paper that only have, say, 50 pages. Well, 50 pages does not make a book, right? But then once I passed the 100-page threshold, I told myself, hey, maybe there is something here. So over the course of the last couple of years, as I would retell my stories, I would make a little note on my phone, be like, hey, that's a good one. Because you can't just think of them as you sit down and try to, recount all your little stories. But as I would tell my friends said stories, I'd be like, hey, let me put that topic onto my phone so I can actually write it out when I have some time to myself. And the book, really culminates all, maybe not all, but a good majority of the silliness I've got myself into, the lessons learned from the ever so endearing foot and mouth moments that I've definitely created for myself. There is also some practical life advice. There's an homage to some friends who are no longer here. There is just a lot of everything in it, right? It's broken down into two halves. The first half is me and my silly stories. It's literally called, the first part is called Silly Stories, the things I've gotten myself into and out of, usually due to my big mouth. And then the second half, like I said, is a little more introspective. That is a little more somber tone, a little more serious in the writing. I share some unpopular opinions. For example, one of the unpopular opinions that I share is about cheating. I have been on the giving and the receiving end of cheating, and it sucks, right? No question about it. And I think that the person who has done the cheating should take full responsibility for what they've done, because they've obviously crossed, over the line. But I also feel like, again, this is the unpopular opinion, that the person being cheated on needs to take maybe 10% of ownership of what happened, because that partner didn't fulfill some need that their partner had, to the point where said partner then went off and found it elsewhere. Again, not to say it's their fault, but I think there is a little bit amount of ownership that the other person needs to take as well, as part of the of the whole enchilada. So anyway, I rant about a bunch of other things in the second half. Rant about, say, the credit card system. The credit system, not the credit card system. But just a bunch of just me having my shower thoughts in a somewhat intelligent way that I can convey to the listener, or to the reader rather. Just a combination of my life experiences, my stories, my silliness, some introspective moments, some practical life advice, and it's all about me. It's unapologetically me. So if you know me, if you've met me in person, it definitely there's nothing in the book that you would not think that, yep, that's 100% Andy right there.
It's funny because I feel like all of us have one of those books lying around, but they're not actually on physical paper in any
Mm-hmm.
shape or form. But it's kind of ironic because we do tend to run into those situations and scenarios where it's a what the fuck moment. That's what I call it. It's a what the fuck moment. You're literally standing there and this whole
Many of
thing is
those.
breaking
Yep.
out, and you're just like, how did I get here? Why am I here? You know? And what are you supposed to do instead of like, hey, guess what? I'm gonna tell you this, and you're gonna read it, and you're gonna be like, oh shit, this man went through hell.
Well, I definitely don't think that okay, look, I I've never had a hard life. When I say hard life, hard with a capital H, no, I've never had a hard life. I was raised
No,
in a somewhat well-to-do, or enough well-to-do, middle class household. We never had to worry about, having a roof over our head or food in our bellies. So I've been through my fair share of hardship, but this is not comparable to someone who's, has been, homeless, right? So I make sure that I frame it in such a way of, these are my first world problems, my white privilege problems that I encounter and chronicle.
no, and I totally agree that what I mean by that is like it's those situations where if you think about it in your own setting, it makes you think afterwards because a lot of just from my own experience with other writers, when you're developing a story, even if it's a short story or if it's a novel or for example in some cases like a series, you get into that headspace of where you're trying to come up with the idea and all of the things, and yeah, it's personal to you. You're
Hmm.
telling how you feel and how you express about the situation and how your emotions that are going through.
Right.
I think every single person goes through their own levels of trauma and pain in their own way. I would probably say, you know what? This is going to be kind of hilarious. It kind of reminds me of like Wingstop, right? You have all the different
Sure.
flavors of sauces you could put on, and some people will hate them, and some people will love them. That's kind of how like our experiences, our life scenarios, and our situations are. It's kind of like Wingstop, and there are sauce options.
I
Hey,
like Wingstop. Okay, I like it. Life is kind of like Wingstop. I like
Yeah,
it.
life is kind of weird.
The, when you said that, it reminded me of one of the things that I share my opinion on, where I say life is like blackjack, right? So if you ever play blackjack, you know there's when you're dealt your card, or rather your cards, there are certain actions you can take. You can either hit or stand. You can even surrender and split, right? That kind of stuff. But really, you have two options. You can either stand on the with the hand you have, or hit to get another card. Now, sometimes, if you've played blackjack, you know this. Sometimes there are some hands you cannot win. The dealer, the house, already has a hand that'll beat yours, and whether you hit or you stand, you will lose that hand. And I think there is a valuable like life lesson to be learned here, where there are certain instances, there are certain situations that you cannot win. No matter what you do, some situations you will not come out on top. Only thing you can do is take the loss, take the knee, and then try again next time.
Yeah, you know what? We forget that a lot of things are a gamble because nothing that you do in life comes without consequences
That's true.
and reward. You know, it, that goes with even, I'm going to say it goes even with relationships. You know, you can have a relationship that you feel is solid, you feel like it's going to last forever. Nope, that's a consequence. You realize afterwards either there's an imbalance, you know, you're not compatible, or something goes wrong and you see how the other side interacts. And it doesn't make every other relationship bad. It just means that in that situation, based on the reward and
Sure.
consequences, based on the gamble, that's the end result. Just like the hand from the
Sure.
poker table.
I
So many
agree with
rounds,
that.
it'll get you
I'll also
21.
say
Yeah.
I agree with that. I'll also say that, for me anyway, I can't speak for anybody else, but for me, when I look back on my past relationships and they, in one way or another, they just didn't work out, right, because of reasons. If those didn't work out due to my action, right, it's easy to beat yourself up and say, well, I fell short on that, or I didn't do that. Also keep in mind that this is the you from, say, 5 or 10 or 15 years ago, right? I would not repeat the same kind of actions today because I've learned from those issues, right? And I think it's easy to beat yourself up over actions you've done in the past, but also remind yourself this is not the you that you're today. You're now smarter, wiser, and you probably wouldn't do the things that you did in those immature relationships.
Yeah. And I think also that's what ties in also with story progression.
Hmm.
It's not where the story starts or where the story ends. It's all of the pieces intertwined between those that
Hmm.
really plays out how things go. Whether it be a previous experience or who you are in the past. I think what sometimes gets lost is, yeah, sometimes it's you that made the mistake or it's the other person, but that doesn't mean that you failed. It just means that it was either something you had to work on or develop better at, or maybe learn more from your own self to be more comfortable,
Yeah.
like being vulnerable, being dependable,
Yeah.
being able to communicate properly with other people.
I agree with that. I think there's a lot of value in that as well. I read a book recently. It's called Replay, that I really really think there's a lot of good to be taken away from that. Basically, the synopsis is a dude who's lived in the like 80s, 70s, 80s, whatever it is. At 64, he dies of a heart attack. That's how the movie. That's how the movie. That's how the book starts. He's a 64 years old, heart attack, dead, and then he wakes up. He comes to being his 18-year-old self again, and the world just keeps on ticking like it has been. The world unfolded just the way it did the first time around, but he's pretty much reliving his life on a replay. And the book then goes into the various different decisions that he makes. At one point, he knows how the stock market plays out. He knows who's going to win the World Series. He just makes a ton of money and becomes super rich, right? And then again at 64, he dies and he relives his life one more time, kind of like Groundhog Day, but on steroids. But as I got done reading it, I thought to myself, what are some of the things that I would do differently, if there are any things I would do differently. And I think it's an interesting what if, mental, game, I guess you call it, to say, well, if I didn't make that choice, if I didn't choose to join the military, if I didn't choose to, move to Vegas afterwards, if I didn't choose to go to college at this age, where would my life have ended up? Would I still be, obviously with the knowledge you have today, it's a little bit different. But what if you redid that life and you didn't make those choices, right? Where would you be? Just that kind of what if game is very interesting to play. Now, I would recommend you don't get lost in it, right? It's easy to,
Oh,
it's a good thing to visit, but not to stay, right? You can visit those thoughts, but don't stay in
no,
them.
no, no, no. Because they can haunt you, because a lot of the times you forget you don't always see where you're going to be in those situations that you run into.
Right.
And I could tell you honestly, even from my own experience, like as time progresses and you start seeing more and more pieces of the puzzle coming together, you you're like, okay, this makes sense now. Now I understand why I'm here, why I'm going to this place, why I'm pursuing this, why am I going this direction. All of those things tie in, but I think what really needs to be nailed down is you have to be patient with yourself. You can't just flick a switch or expect it to happen instantaneously. It's not how human beings work.
That'd be nice, wouldn't
It
it?
would be nice,
Would
but
take all the joy out of it too, right? It's kind of like I remember I'm a computer nerd. I've been playing computer games and fiddling with computers ever since my first computer was a Commodore 64, way back in the day. Kind of dates myself a
what
little
it
bit,
is.
right? But I remember playing, there's a game way back in the day, an old DOS game called Transport Tycoon Deluxe. Basically just like one big supply chain management game where you build tracks for railroads. And anyway, it doesn't
It's
really
like
matter. It's an
Oregon
economics
Trail.
based. Something like that. You basically work up your economy and you make money, so you can build more economy, so you make more money, right? And that was the whole story, or that was the game loop, right? You start with nothing, you build yourself up to then build bigger and better things to make more money.
Imagine the
Well,
floppy
being a
drives.
kid, yeah, exactly, exactly. So being a kid, and trying to use and abuse the system, there's ways you can use a hex editor to change values in applications and games. So me getting smart about this, I thought it'd be a great idea to start off the game and give myself literally unlimited funds to start the game off with, right? And that was great for the first 5 minutes because you could build and do whatever the hell you wanted. But it quickly became extremely boring because there was no longer a challenge to playing the game. And I think life has something similar where it's like, sure, you can press if there were an easy mode button, would you want to press it? Because sure, it'd be great to wake up one day and have a $2 billion balance in your checking account. Great. But I think all the fun of the challenge of life gets sucked out along with it. And it's like, great, you now have everything that you want, and I would bet that life would be exciting yet extremely boring.
It, it's strange because a lot of the times it's what you want to pursue. You want to pursue the viral. You want to pursue the fame. You want to pursue the numbers. But reality really does kick in where if things do become too easy, you become bored with life because then life doesn't
Meaningless.
really have any challenges to it. Like,
Absolutely.
I'm going to be straight up. This is one thing I learned even for myself because of my background and my upbringing. If I'm in a romantic relationship with somebody and if they come from a very cushy background, very upper middle
Hmm.
class, pretty wealthy, and they have like no understanding of struggle, I have a
Sure.
very difficult time relating. It's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that person. It's just my mind and their mind just can't. We're not compatible. It's just not
Sure.
minds that
Different
compatible.
wavelengths.
Correct.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah. And to your point, it's not their fault, right? They didn't choose to be brought up in that household with the opportunities that they had. It's nothing wrong with them or their upbringing. It's just that, hey, look, you come from a different, I don't know, walk of life, different set of beliefs, right? Different set of values, and it's just not always compatible with people who are not from that.
It's it's one of those weird hippy dippy things where everybody can get along and everybody can understand each other. No. But
No,
it
you don't think so?
I think that we can sit across a table all sorts of people and even if you have those incompatibilities and those differences and still get points across.
Hmm.
But all in all, as human beings, to fully understand another person, no.
I think there needs to be some struggle, right, to understand what that person is about. There needs to be a little bit of struggle. If nothing, if life has been nothing but a cakewalk, then I don't know. I'm sure there's still value in that, but I think there's something that gets lost in the human experience if everything is easy.
Yeah, and you honestly you could see that too. I mean, we mentioned this earlier. Like you take a character like Wes Anderson. If you sit down and watch the way that he makes his film, you can see somebody that did grow up very cushioned, didn't really struggle in his life, struggling to figure out what the real world is like. That's what he
Hmm.
does. That's, a lot of times, he has his movies that hit. A lot of times they don't hit, but you could see that yearning out of somebody, like in your case, where you can even edit and update that game and put in where you have that unlimited fun, like you have that
Hmm.
unlimited cushion. But then how do you now make life exciting when you have that?
Exactly. Exactly. What's the next step, right? What makes it interesting? What makes it entertaining? And to finish up that story about the game, once I gave myself the $2 billion credits to start with, became so boring. I put it down. I couldn't play it again. Like it just became so mindlessly numbing, so mind-numbingly drab that there's just no point to it.
You wonder though, especially like even with doing podcasts like this, even talking with different types of artists, even like yourself, like, being a writer, you wonder to yourself on how many people are actually going to be paying attention, even around yourself.
Mm.
And then you have to ask yourself, should I be okay with I can pay attention. I can be aware of these things. I can try to build that for myself and not worry what happens around me. Is that I personally feel like that's the best way to manage because then you don't have to worry about anything else. If people are like, "Oh my god, this is happening over here." I don't care. I'm living in my own world. If that happens in my circle, that's great. If it's not, I'm not really interested.
I think there's value in that. I like to be informed. I like to read or listen or be aware of the news around me, but sometimes there is value in just being blissfully ignorant sometimes, right?
That's
Sometimes I don't
nice.
want to know because sometimes knowing just brings about its own little challenges, right? And sometimes I feel like people that choose not to know or choose not to be involved, they live in their own little bubble. And there's nothing wrong with that, but sometimes I wish I can just not care and kind of just live in my own bubble too and just enjoy the things that are within, you know, the 10 feet of around me, and that's it.
You don't need to be heightened aware. You don't have to be overeducated. You just need to be educated enough.
Mm.
And I think being able to get that sweet balance of interaction, learning something new, exploring something
Yeah.
different,
Yeah.
that goes so much further. Like, I know you live in Las Vegas, but this is something that even gets lost. Even in a place like Las Vegas, you still have those places and those areas that you can just keep on going to that they're not all about the viral, and the money and the this. It's just a place where you can kind of come together creatively and just be yourself.
Mm.
That exists in practically every single place. It's because you make it. It's not the other way
Yeah,
around.
that's true. There is no fear of missing out if you live your life the way you want to, right? There is nothing you're missing out on because you're happy with what you have and what you bring to the table for yourself.
Yeah, you know what? There's no. We can end off on this, but there's no key that says or rule that's etched into somebody's fucking skin that states, oh, you got to get to the next step in order so you can get that. Like the big house.
Right, right,
Like the BMW. In my case, I'm
right,
working
right.
on them, so I'm okay with that. Like I don't even.
Your 2.5 kids and your white picket fence and your right all the things that you're supposed to have as a checkbox, right?
Yes, it's like you don't. It'd be nice, but you know what? Like I'm sure there's other things that you can work towards. If you
Sure.
run into the partner, that's great. You eventually want kids. Worry about when that happens. Once you get down there, you're like, oh my god, what about the house? Worry about it when you get down there. You don't need to watch all those realtors showing you houses on Instagram. We both know that
No, you
just
don't.
makes you more
No, you
miserable.
don't. That's right. I agree. Be happy with what you have, right?
Um, so Andy, what I wanted to wrap up with, We talked a
Yeah.
little bit about your book. We got into a lot of deep thinking over here. I think we went a little deeper than deep. But
No, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the non. How should I phrase this?
unconventional.
The the the, the non-attachment to any topic. I liked how it just kind of went from one topic to another, and the conversation just flowed. I like those kind of interviews.
Kind of like little stories happening in one hour sesh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I like that.
I know that you have a book. You've got your social media. Your book is on Amazon. Walk me through where can these people find your stuff? Because
Sure, absolutely.
got a whole story.
I got a couple of things. So easiest way to get a hold of it, if you go to andysbook.com, one word, andysbook.com. There's a picture of me holding it up. There's a picture, or rather there's a link how to get it on Amazon. However, for your listeners here, if you go to andysbook.com/gift, punch in your information. I have a few left. I'm more than happy to send you a signed copy.
Perfect. And by the way, I've had other writers on this podcast too, where being able to have that link for a signed copy or that offer, I mean, come on, you get something that's probably something that most people don't have on their bookshelf. It's a fun read, especially if you want to, and you get a signed copy.
There you go. And with a signature, it'll be worth even less, right?
But it means something to
Joking.
you.
That's
So
right.
definitely, I think especially after like talking to you for an hour, if anybody is like, what could Andy possibly put in his book? I promise you, it's a lot more exciting than this podcast. Okay, you got to read it to find
No,
out.
no. Give yourself a little bit more credit than that. It was a good talk, okay? It was a good talk. We touched on a lot of good things here. But to your point, the book is 160 pages worth of my thoughts and my silliness and my shenanigans. So if any of what I said in the last hour or so has tickled you, then I think you'll enjoy the rest of it too.
Do you have an audio version of this book or not yet?
So no, I will say not yet. Once, if and when it gets to the point where it has enough traction, right, then I'll consider it. But right now, it's a decent amount of work that you have to put into, because I'll be the one narrating it. It's a not insignificant amount of work that you have to put into it. I'm more than happy to go down that path, but not at the size that the audience is today. Maybe in 6 months, 12 months, when there's enough drive, enough momentum, and there's actually like a market for it, great. But I would hate to put in all that work and effort for it to then just sit there stale, right? That's not a good use of my time.
Yeah. Well, you know what though? That is something to look forward to. Especially like for the next step. I honestly, you know what? You get the whole school experience. You get to get the person sitting on the subway hearing the next stop is, while you're reading the book. You know what? Hop on the headphones, put on noise cancellation so you could focus, but yeah.
It wouldn't be the worst. It won't be the worst expenditure of a couple hours. I'll guarantee you that.
And you do also have social media, right?
I do. Now, those are for my own personal social media. There's nothing I have yet for the book specifically, so I'm hesitant to give out my personal. If you really want to get a hold of me, there's a contact button on the website. There's a lot of ways you can get a hold of me. I'm not an unknown entity online. But again, there's nothing that is specifically tied to the book yet. That's a work in progress. So for the time being, we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll leave all the links and everything below, and like you said, I'll leave also the contact information if somebody wants to reach out to you.
Great.
Listen, man,
Yeah.
thank you so much for coming on and sharing your
Dave,
story.
thanks for having me. Yeah,
And
had a good time talking to you.
come on, we taught a few people about gambling, a little more careful.
Life lessons. Friends become enemies, enemies become friends, right? Narratives, right? All that good stuff. Little prose, right?
Well, anybody out there, if you want to check out more of the podcast, find us at Pod. We are on that. All right, man.